When my parents failed to book a room for me on our family trip, it set off a chain reaction. My sister arrogantly declared, "We reserved rooms for me, my husband, and my child. We're the real family." I calmly responded, "Then I'll leave," and walked out. Despite ignoring dozens of frantic calls, hours later something utterly unthinkable happened that changed everything. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up in my Chicago apartment, and as always, that familiar anxiety settled in my chest. Another year, another family reunion. This year's gathering was set at the Breakers, a luxury resort hotel in Palm Beach, Florida. It was our annual family trip, all expenses paid by my grandfather. While checking my suitcase one last time, I sighed deeply and caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. I'm Helen Walker, 33, a research director at a pharmaceutical company earning $160,000 a year, living alone in Chicago. I've built my assets with careful investments. Money matters, but dignity is even more valuable, a lesson my grandfather drilled into me. A successful businessman who made his fortune in construction, he taught me everything about financial management from a young age. He's the only one in the family who truly gets me. In stark contrast, my sister Catherine, a former flight attendant turned full-time housewife, leads what appears to be a glamorous life with her husband and 7-year-old daughter. Yet, this lifestyle wouldn't be possible without our grandfather's monthly support, covering high mortgage payments, car loans, and even their daughter's private school tuition. Despite this, Catherine's social media is flooded with posts of designer bags, fancy dinners, expensive vacations, an obsession with a lifestyle far removed from reality. My parents, George and Margaret, seem to be enjoying a comfortable retirement in Florida, but even that wouldn't be sustainable without grandfather's help. Their retirement planning, the deposit for their upscale retirement home, everything depends on him. My parents have always been distant with me, yet indulgent with Catherine, a dynamic that has lingered since childhood. During college, I paid my tuition with scholarships and earned my living through part-time jobs, while Catherine relied completely on our parents for study abroad expenses and daily living costs. That disparity remains a painful memory. Become someone who can stand on your own feet, my grandfather used to say, and I've lived by those words, studying and working hard to achieve independence. I built my career in the pharmaceutical industry, grew my investments, and created a life where I need no one's support. My high-rise apartment overlooking Chicago's skyline is a testament to my efforts, a modest luxury within my means. As I lifted my suitcase, the anxiety about this year's Thanksgiving grew. The family's twisted relationships, Catherine's obsession with appearances, our parents' biased affection, and grandfather's worried eyes only deepened over time. In the taxi to the airport, I pondered this year's trip. The Breakers, a prestigious 5-star hotel established in 1896, boasted Italian Renaissance architecture and luxurious suites over $800 a night. The Thanksgiving dinner was said to cost a fortune per person. Despite the glitz, our family's reality was fragile. Catherine's ostentatious lifestyle, our parents' comfortable retirement, all supported by grandfather's assistance. And this year, these tensions were nearing their breaking point. As we approached Palm Beach International Airport, the taxi's window revealed the unspoken truth everyone sensed, but no one dared mention. Florida's gentle sunlight bathed the road on Thanksgiving Day as I finally arrived at the resort, the last guest to come. Dragging my navy-colored suitcase, I stepped into the magnificent Italian Renaissance building. My simple yet elegant theory dress had creased during the long flight. The lobby was a spacious, dignified area where luxurious chandeliers sparkled overhead and footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Other guests were already enjoying their Thanksgiving in their own ways. Heading toward the front desk, I saw my parents in a quiet corner of the lobby. Mom wore what appeared to be a new resort dress, and Dad was casually dressed, fitting his age. When our eyes met, they quickly looked away. "Miss Walker, I apologize, but I cannot find your reservation," the front desk staff said apologetically, repeatedly checking the screen. "I can see reservations for your family members," they added, as the sound of expensive heels approached. I turned to see Catherine striding over with a triumphant look, an Hermes Birkin bag in her arm and a Cartier watch glinting. "Oh, Helen, you finally made it," she said with deliberate sarcasm. The staff continued checking the system as other guests began to take notice. "How strange. There's no reservation," Catherine's voice rose, clearly aiming to distract everyone. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase stood out next to my navy one. Stepping closer with a victorious smile, she declared, "I only booked reservations for our family, a room for me, my husband and daughter, and another for Mom and Dad. That's what the real family gets." A heavy silence fell. The front desk staff was left speechless, and our parents turned even further away. The air around me froze for a moment. Taking a slow, deep breath, I calmly replied, "Then I'll leave," without altering my expression. Adjusting my grip on the suitcase, I nodded politely to the front desk staff and opened the taxi-hailing app on my smartphone. Catherine's voice rose slightly, but I was already making my way to the exit, feeling the sympathetic gaze of the staff. I walked toward the entrance while my sister, caught off guard by the turn of events, maintained her triumphant smile. Our parents stood awkwardly, frozen in place, as only the sound of my footsteps echoed through the silent lobby. Outside, the afternoon sunlight shone brightly as I waited for my taxi. Palm trees swayed in the pleasant breeze. The Thanksgiving holiday I had expected to spend at this luxury resort had evaporated in just a few minutes, yet in that moment, a strange sense of liberation filled my heart. Grandfather's words echoed once again, "Become someone who can stand on their own feet." Now, I truly understood their meaning. As I waited, I gazed at the hotel's magnificent exterior. The Adams-style architecture told a story of over 100 years of history, lavishly decorated for Thanksgiving celebrations. Luxury cars continued to arrive, dropping off well-dressed families, all stepping out through the grand glass lobby. I watched my niece Amy, barely a year old, fidgeting in an expensive dress that hardly suited her. Every Thanksgiving, it was my tradition to bring her a gift, and this year I'd prepared a pearl hair clip, still neatly wrapped in my suitcase. As I climbed into the arriving taxi, I instructed the driver to Palm Beach International Airport. While on my smartphone, I was already scouting for the next flight to Chicago. Even though Thanksgiving airfares were steep, I didn't mind. What bothered me more was the yearly emotional toll this season demanded. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the Breakers building shrink in the distance, its sleek form catching the afternoon sun. It seemed to symbolize our family's superficial glamour, and now, the first crack had appeared. I couldn't predict what was coming next, but one thing was clear: there was no turning back. Inside the taxi, the quiet space shielded me from the external clamor, with cool air conditioning and premium leather seats easing the tension. Outside, Palm Beach's signature resort scene passed by lined palm trees, pristine luxury homes, and occasional views of the sparkling Atlantic. Typically captivating, these sights now felt oddly remote. I pulled out my smartphone and dialed my grandfather's number without a moment's hesitation. The ringtone seemed to stretch on longer than usual before he answered. "Helen, what's wrong?" he asked calmly. I replied matter-of-factly, recounting the hotel events without emotion, the missing reservation made solely for me, Catherine's harsh words, and how I left. On the other end, I could sense his breathing grow slightly rough, his anger held in check. "I understand. I'll handle this from here," he said, his voice low and heavy, a premonition of what was to come. Shortly after hanging up, incoming calls began to flood in. First, Catherine's 10 missed calls in 15 minutes. "Helen, Amy wants to see you. She's been looking forward to our Thanksgiving for so long. Aren't you thinking of a child's feelings? My friends are coming over for dinner tonight. I had plans to post a perfect family Thanksgiving on Instagram. Do you know how embarrassing it is to explain this situation?" Her voice was frantic. Then came Catherine's email, harshly reminding me that, despite being independent, I should have prioritized the real family over extra room expenses. Their emails, laced with spite and calculated remarks, piled up. Father's message was even colder. "Catherine has a family, a husband and child. Can't you just quietly put up with it for Thanksgiving?" It felt like I was being cast as the villain. The barrage continued. "We had everything planned for social media. Lovely photos of you and Amy," one message read. Each notification tightened the knot in my chest. These weren't new wounds. Since childhood, my sister and I had faced the same discrimination. As the taxi neared the airport, more messages arrived. "Because of your selfishness, Amy is crying. She's waited so long to see her aunt," my sister's voice echoed through texts. Using her daughter as a shield, she continued, until the end. In the background, I could only sense vanity and pride from Mother, whose sarcastic emails kept coming. "Poor Catherine, if only you understood how desperate she is about Amy's future. You wouldn't get it, but education is expensive." At that moment, I felt oddly grateful for their blatant true colors, leaving no need for a reply. Just before reaching the airport, an email from Grandfather came through. "I'm proud of your decision. I understand everything." For a moment, my eyes welled up, not with sadness, but with quiet determination marking a new beginning. Despite the relentless calls from my sister, her panicked messages pleading for me to answer the phone, and our parents' accusatory emails claiming that my selfishness was tearing the family apart, I reached a point where I could no longer be reached by their voices. Stepping out of the taxi, I began walking toward the international terminal while booking my flight to Chicago. A strange sense of liberation washed over me. This was my moment of escape from a fake family. About 30 minutes after boarding the Chicago-bound plane, another email arrived from grandfather, this time addressed to all family members. Today, on Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that severely damaged our family's dignity. The cruel treatment of Helen is an injury to the Walker family name and cannot be tolerated. Effective immediately, I am freezing all financial support to George, Margaret, and Catherine. Remember, your luxurious lifestyles depend entirely on my support. Those lost in vanity and pretense no longer qualify for such privilege. As I finished reading that, frantic calls from my sister began to pour in, her panicked tone clear as she urged, "Helen, please answer the phone. Convince Grandpa." Voicemails recorded her anxious pleas, making it evident that her life depended on grandfather's monthly payments. Soon after, desperate emails from our parents followed, their previous arrogance replaced with pleas. "Helen, this is about our retirement. Please talk to your grandfather again. The $150,000 deposit for the luxury retirement home is at risk, and our medical insurance subsidies will vanish." Their panic over a crumbling retirement plan was palpable. Then, an unexpected email from Mother arrived, its tone uncharacteristically apologetic. "I'm sorry for saying such terrible things earlier, but this is a family crisis." At that point, I quietly turned off my smartphone. Outside, a vast sea of clouds stretched across the sky, and the perfect Thanksgiving photos we'd usually post on social media would remain untouched this year. For Catherine, that would hurt even more than the financial blow. The plane headed steadily toward Chicago, its smooth flight contrasting with the storm of messages I'd just endured. Next to me, a passenger browsed Thanksgiving recipes on their smartphone, seemingly lost in thoughts of dinner preparations, a scene that felt almost surreal now. I was meant to hand Amy her present in the hotel lounge after landing when I logged onto my Chicago home Wi-Fi. Over 100 unread messages greeted me, most from my sister, their tone growing increasingly frantic. "What do I do?" they seemed to ask. "I wouldn't be able to cover the loans, and what about Amy's school fees?" Our parents' emails had also taken a serious turn. "We might not recover the deposit on the retirement home. How are we supposed to manage now?" I couldn't sleep, haunted by worries over medical insurance. Yet nothing captured my attention more than grandfather's final notice, sent to everyone. It read, "This action is irreversible. Consider it the result of your own decisions. Any objection will result in the termination of all support." I calmly scrolled through the incoming messages. Their once arrogant tone had dissolved into desperate pleas. Never before had every family member's true colors been so vividly revealed. I set my smartphone aside and brewed some tea in the kitchen. Normally by this time, I would have been relishing a luxurious Thanksgiving dinner at the hotel, a special course costing $200 per person. The memory of that price made me smile slightly. Every year, my sister's family posted about this extravagant meal on social media, even though they struggled to make even the monthly credit card payments. Then came another call, this time from my sister's husband, his voice filled with panic and confusion as he criticized his wife's spending habits. Cracks were starting to show in their marriage too. More pointed pleas arrived from our parents. The retirement home wouldn't refund the $150,000 advance payment, and starting next month, medical insurance would be self-funded because of our actions. Following those words was a familiar refrain, my sister defending herself and blaming me, as if nothing had changed. I squeezed a lemon from the fridge into my tea. Tomorrow, I'd return to work as usual, where new research data awaited me at the pharmaceutical company, a project with a $160,000 annual salary and steadily growing investment trusts. This stable life was a foundation I'd built on my own. Outside the window, Chicago's nighttime skyline sparkled quietly, the high-rise lights resembling stars. I recalled my own credit card statement. Every month, full payments, moderate luxuries well within my means, and no debt. Grandfather's favorite saying echoed in my mind, "Vanity is for others, savings are for yourself." In this city, I'd carved out a life through my own efforts. As grandfather had once said, I had become someone who could stand on his own feet, and I deeply believed that choice was the right one. Even as more calls continued to ring on my smartphone, their voices no longer reached me. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, early December in Chicago brought the season's first snow. I immersed myself in new projects at the pharmaceutical laboratory while my family situation underwent dramatic changes. The first signs appeared on social media. My sister's Instagram, once updated almost daily, had fallen silent. Her last post from the day before. Thanksgiving was a glamorous photo at an upscale restaurant, tagged with a dream lifestyle. The caption, "What a wonderful life," now struck me as painfully ironic. Then, an email from father finally expressed genuine remorse. Reflecting on our years of extravagant living, we spoiled Catherine too much and were cold to you. I'm sorry. Mother's similar message arrived, lamenting the loss of medical insurance subsidies and admitting that our pension alone was nowhere near enough. It was a wake-up call to the lavish lifestyle we once enjoyed. Meanwhile, Catherine's situation was even graver. An unexpected call from her husband revealed hidden debts and shocking credit card bills. With grandfather's support abruptly withdrawn, their illusion of affluence was collapsing. They were even considering moving to a cheaper house and public schools for Amy. Catherine's nightly cries, filled with exhaustion and resignation, hinted at a marriage in crisis. In contrast, my life remained calm. I arrived at work at 8 a.m. and returned home at 6 p.m. Weekends were dedicated to investment study groups and reviewing my savings. Just yesterday, I was promoted to team leader on a new research project with an expected salary increase. Investment trust operations were thriving, and I felt secure in my future. Vanity brings momentary pleasure, but savings deliver lifelong peace of mind. Grandfather's words were now weighing heavily on the entire family. While my parents fretted over retirement insecurity and my sister battled debt, I simply continued my ordinary life. Over these 2 weeks, the frequency of emails and calls dwindled significantly, from daily urgent messages during those frantic days to just once or twice a week. Their tone shifted gradually toward resignation. Amy was set to transfer to a public school and take the school bus. I never imagined my sister would accept this reality, and her recent email hinted that the glamorous private school life she once flaunted on social media was over. Our parents were also considering downsizing from their luxury Florida community to an affordable condominium, burdened by mounting medical bills. We've been living by the wrong values for years, read father's latest email. Yet whether this realization would mend our family bonds remained uncertain. Last week, I received a terse email from grandfather. Awakening to life's truths brings necessary pain. Your decision has taught an important lesson. I didn't reply, I simply saved the email quietly. Outside, Chicago's skyline glowed under new stars as early signs of spring began to appear. My life, if anything, had grown more fulfilling. The new project at the pharmaceutical company was progressing smoothly, and I'd just been promoted to research director, with my salary rising to $200,000. Meanwhile, investment trusts continued to flourish, steadily growing assets. From my office window, I could see the vast expanse of Lake Michigan, its waves sparkling under the spring sun, a quiet promise of hope. New research data piled up on my desk, and time spent immersed in work became my most treasured period. Recently, a birthday present arrived from grandfather, a simple pearl necklace accompanied by a note in his elegant handwriting. True brilliance lies in standing on your own feet. I had already begun keeping minimal contact with my parents, who had moved from their luxury Florida community to a modest condominium, gradually adjusting to reality. Luxury might offer fleeting joy, but true security is found in a grounded lifestyle. For the first time, mother's email conveyed genuine understanding. My sister's family had relocated to an ordinary suburban neighborhood, Amy now riding the school bus to public school, and Catherine's social media was silent, an empty echo of former pretenses. Her rare email admitted, "We're still struggling with credit card bills, and our marriage remains strained, but at least we are facing reality." I, meanwhile, had started setting new goals. I wanted to achieve more in pharmaceutical research, eventually leading my own team to pass on my knowledge to younger researchers. On holidays, I attended investment and economic study groups, where the practical, genuine conversations were a refreshing change from pretense and vanity. The Thanksgiving episode had imparted important lessons to everyone: the value of financial independence, the emptiness of a flashy lifestyle, and, most importantly, the true meaning of family. Grandfather's final words still resonated deeply. Real bonds are forged only by overcoming hardship. In my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I'd saved as Amy's present remained beautifully wrapped. Someday, when she understands the true value of standing on her own 2 feet rather than chasing social media likes, that will be the right moment to give it to her. Outside, early spring winds rustled through the street trees, as if heralding the start of a new season.